And see, it's just that easy, gentlemen. We are live on another brand new episode right here on Longbox Punk. You found us. Welcome in on a Memorial Day weekend. I am stoked. I'm Chris, by the way. If I didn't say that, I usually don't introduce myself. I assume if you're here, you know who I am, which might be egotistical, but it's my channel. So this is the beauty of being live, gents. I am joined with a creative duo of Skillet Fire Studios. We've got JW right here next to me. Say hi, JW.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. And then we've got Scott down here. Say hi, Scott.
Hey. Hello.
They are making some super rad comics called, currently called the Gimme Five Comics. It is an anthology, 5 characters, 5 short stories, 5 pages each, with some extra goodies that are mixed in right there. Gimme Five number 5, the golden issue, if you will, is currently crowdfunding on Kickstarter. It's got like 12 days to go. It ends on June 6th. We'll get into the business end of all of that in just a bit. But before we get there, any good comic has an origin story of sorts. And so I want to start there. Like, what's your origin stories? How did you get into comics and start creating comics? Like, how did we end up here with the 5th issue of Gimme Five Comics in 2025?
Jay, why don't you start?
All right. I used to make comics in elementary school with my friend Ewan back in, in the 80s, I think. But we would start stories and sell subscriptions and then not finish the story. So we ended up like making bank every time we started a new comic. So that was pretty cool for elementary school students. But yeah, so that was the start, and just have been working on comics ever since. We did zines. I was in the mailing zines back and forth with lots of people through the 90s, and then I started working at newspapers. Scott and I did a comic strip called Sea Urchins for about 4 years, and then sort of different comic projects here and there, and we decided let's make a graphic novel. So last one we did was Boylan Heights, and Marcosia Entertainment published that, and lots of people saw it. Joe Lansdale is one of them, so we got to work with Joe Lansdale on Gimme Five, and we're working with a great artist in I think he's in Brazil, JP Torres on Red Rube. So
Nice.
How about you, Scott?
Yeah, so I got started drawing. I think we all go back to elementary school, right? Where maybe we were trying to get that laugh, right? So with me, it was trying to just do dumb drawings in school to make my friends laugh, like the teacher getting drunk, or the stuck-up kid in the class getting beaten up by squirrels or animals or something. So even today, my favorites are the ones that make me laugh. Mm-hmm. And if they make me laugh, chances are they're going to make Jay laugh, and if Jay laughs, I could probably get other people to laugh too. And Jay and I we went to University of Georgia together, and we started doing zines in the University of Georgia back in the zine days. And then we would come up with ideas, we'd roll with it. We got published in a few little tiny places. Sea Urchins, we signed a kind of a book deal with what was the name of that place, Jay?
Plan 9 Comics, yeah.
Plan 9 Comics, and then 2008 hit, and everything crashed. So then we lost that contract. So then we were just scrapping. But we've been kind of just fighting and doing creative stuff since 1988, 1989. Like, we go back,
Yeah.
Jay and I.
That's awesome. So did you guys meet in college then?
Yes. Yeah.
That's cool. Was it like in a creative writing or like some sort of like fancy art class, or was it just like Psych 101?
It was probably a party.
Yeah, I think it was a party, but we ended up taking a folk art class together that was good.
Nice.
From Art Rosenbaum, and drove all over Georgia looking at folk art, and I think Scott's got a bunch of folk art.
Oh yeah, there's one right there.
Ari
Miller. But Chris, what's weird? Art Rosenbaum, he was our teacher at the University of Georgia, and then I was watching Invincible, and reading
Yeah.
the comics. And Art Rosenbaum is the tailor in that comic. So Jay and I were trying to figure out, okay, who took his class in Athens, Georgia back in the day.
Yeah.
Somebody did. Because that's such a weird name. And he was
Yeah,
an
it
artist.
is a very specific name.
Yeah. So
We ought to say, like, Art's also a Grammy winner because he was recording banjo music, and he played with a band. But I think his Grammy is for archiving a lot of the people's music. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's cool. I wonder how do you even end up winning a Grammy for archiving music? Like that feels so hyper niche specific.
I know. It makes me feel like, what can I do?
Right. Yeah. Speaking of Georgia, so I used to my buddy that I grew up with, his uncle lives just outside of Atlanta in Decatur, Georgia. And he we used to go to his house for July 4th because his neighborhood did a big July 4th fireworks show and whatever. And it was an excuse for us to get out of Ohio for a bit. And so we would the first time we went down, there were 3 of us buddies that drove down. And we showed up at his uncle's house. Like everybody's arriving at different times all throughout the day. And so we're just sitting there in the living room, and he's got a piano in his living room, and because he's a composer and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there, and as they're playing around and conversations just kind of we're very relaxed and tired from the drive. And I notice on his shelf in the living room, there's picture, and then peeking out behind it was a Grammy. And I was like, that's not a Grammy. You're a Grammy winner? And I got up, and he had 5 of them all hidden behind all of these pictures. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? Why do you have so many Grammys? B, why are they hidden behind what? And he was like, oh yeah, I won them because I write songs for people and they won Grammys. So whatever. And I was just like, dude, that feels like a major accomplishment that you're just hiding in your living room. He was like, yeah, I didn't want to just put them in my closet. They were in my closet for the longest time. And then, one of my kids said I need to put them somewhere in the living room. So there they are. I was like, geez. Yeah. So I love that you guys have done all of the iterations of the very DIY comics. How did you go from making zines in the 90s to then rejuvenating some of these old public domain characters?
Oh man, I think it just becomes a natural progression where I think every time we do a character, I think it's based on as a writer, it's based on usually something that I've either seen on TV or something that someone I know or I'm taking a little bit or a little piece of this person and kind of just doing a Play-Doh, a 4-year-old Play-Doh figure of a character.
Yeah.
And Jay was one that was like, hey, let's look at some public domain people. And I think once we started digging around in those old comic books, it was like, okay, here's some ideas. But then there's people like UFO Man who turns into a UFO and fights crime, and Ferret Boy who has a costume. I don't know how to bring those into reality. Other than to use maybe I just used Ferret Boy in a 5-pager I just sent Jay today. So it becomes kind of like this awkward canvas that I have to paint over.
Yeah.
And just trying to think, how can I put a spin on this? And Jay was the one who kind of came up with Red Rube, that we should use Red Rube.
Yeah,
so
some of that was
about that.
The idea, I think, for 5 pages and 5 stories, 5 characters also came from Boylan Heights, because we did the graphic novel. We were gone on that for 3 or 4 years, and it was just like being on a submarine. And
a slog.
We needed something shorter and just bite size. And I think it's easier for people to also read that. But yeah,
we kind of coined a short attention span comics.
Which is perfect, because that's exactly me.
Each issue is 5 stories and 5 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
is
don't
it,
think, yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I teach public high school, and trying to get kids to read is really tough. Like reading
Yeah.
stamina has just like plateaued. And so it's like so I like to think of like these as kind of like the you know, the Instagram, TikTok videos of comic books, sort of like, you know, slightly more than Joe Bazooka comics, but
Yeah.
not much.
Yeah. It's as I've gotten more serious about writing, like I was told by some folks that I have like went to college with that are now editors at small comic publishers or whatever. And one of the recurring things that I heard was start small. And I was like, oh, yeah, like I don't want to write, an 800-page magnum opus. Like I don't have that in
Sure.
me right now.
Sure.
But starting small, I thought was going to be much simpler than it is. Because once I started writing, it was like, oh God, I got to distill down this story that I have that might have been like 15 pages and like not enough for a full page, but like, too long for a short. And so it was
Yeah.
just like, well, how do I trim the fat? Like what needs to happen? What do I need to include? And it
That's
actually
tough,
was
isn't it?
much more challenging than I initially ever thought it would be. But I'm glad that everybody told me that, because then it was a good, like, I have to get really good at succinctly telling a story instead of just, rambling about the thing. And eventually it makes sense, after however long.
Yeah.
And so it was something that I underestimated in difficulty when I first started. And I'm not by any means saying like, oh, I figured it out after those two, but now I'm like, I at least know what
Oh,
I'm getting into. So
it
like,
gets tricky, doesn't it? Trying to whittle. You get this idea, and you got to whittle it down.
yeah.
And yeah, so
And you don't want it to feel like, part 7 of 14. Like I don't want to do that, right? Like I
yeah,
want it to be a whole story within itself. And we mentioned beforehand, but like I am getting ready to launch my first Kickstarter next Wednesday, June 4th, if
hell
you want
yeah,
to tune in. And like, so we started, and we were very intentional with, we want to start small, we want to start short, do like an ash can style story, and then eventually build out. And like we have a Word doc that we've shared that has just like pages and pages of info and like backstory and history and idea and world building
wow,
stuff. And it was like, well, now we got to distill all of this into like, what's our intro story, but not just like an intro, right? Like I want it to be a full story. And the thing about my collaborator and I, we're both named Chris. Instagram gives us the exact same ads. Like it thinks that we are the same person with the same brain. But we, like, the more that we collaborate, the more that we realize we kind of do have the same brain, because he was like, yeah, it needs to be its own thing. Like, I don't want it to be, well, here's the ash can, so make sure you read issue 1 to finish the story. Like, no, we want a full story in this one little page. So like, how do you, because not all of your characters appear in every issue of Gimme Five. So like, how do you determine, I guess, like, how do you approach telling different stories with the same characters, but over different issues in those little 5-page bursts?
Jay, you want to take this, or you want me to write?
I think it's like a song list. Like you kind of look and see what songs are going to work next to each other, and like in this issue we need to wrap up one storyline, or it's not going to go good. This isn't going to work well next to Steve Keith, or which is Steve Keith's tough act to follow anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love Steve Keith.
Yeah. So I think it's like that, like a song list, really.
And do you
go ahead?
So, I mean, using that metaphor of the song, like, do you approach each issue like its own like concept album of like, is there a through line, or do each of the stories have something like, how do you determine, like in the issue 5 about to come out, it's got Steve Keith, Mud with Hastine, Sharon, and then Red Rube, and then the mysterious 5th story. Like, how do you determine that those are the stories you're going to tell in this 5th issue? as opposed to like, why not Ghost Girl or why not Sergeant Death Squad? Like, how do you determine what stories get told when and in what order? Like, am I overthinking it?
A little bit. I think sometimes like you've written stuff before and then you see it and you're like, it kind of died on the vine a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there's just some stuff that, like, when you write, you just don't have, like, you don't hear the voices and you don't see it in your head as clear as the other stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the way we work sort of is Jason will hassle me and say like, hey, I need a story. And like this morning he messaged me and I gave him a really rough story about using one of the new open domain characters, public domain characters. Sandhog, like, I don't even know what he looks like, but I kind of made him kind of like I was talking before, like you kind of borrow stuff. So maybe a little bit like Sandman, a little bit like Plastic Man, but then a little bit like Steve Keith, where he's just a hoarder and a slob. And but anyway, so he goes on a job interview. There's like this business that has third and fourth tier superheroes, and they have to go in and face this panel, and they get shot down, and not literally, but just like, can you fly next or whatever, and
like
and,
an American
it just shows
Idol.
That's where I got the idea. I had a student that she auditioned for American Idol, and I was like, what was it like? And she's like, oh, they sent us up in like a group of 10, and they're like, you sing, you sing, you sing, you sing, and then everybody out or whatever. And I was, so yeah, exactly. That's exactly what was running through my head. So, but Jay will often sometimes just say too, like, hey, we got to wrap up Hastine or whatever. And and I'm like, okay, as long as we're not wrapping up. Like, Steve Keith is my favorite. Yeah, I love Steve Keith. As long as Jay is not like, hey, let's wrap up Steve Keith, I'm fine. But like, Chris, like when you write, like you write with this other Chris, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So I've never collaborated with another writer before. Usually it's just I'm working with Jay, who's the artist, and we've been working together so long, I can just kind of give him like a really rough, like, point of views from behind Chris looking towards the screen of the computer. I can give him directions like that. And it's like, wow, he nails it every time. But so what's it like to work with another writer? Or like, what would you say is the best and the toughest part?
So I think we have a really unique, like, I'm glad that he's the first collaborator that I've worked with. Cause he's done his own comics before. Like, he's doing all the artwork for our book. And then like, so when we first met, it was like, well, I can't draw, like, that, right? And he was like, yeah, no, that's totally fine. He was like, but like, let's like kick around a story or whatever. And so we had an awkward FaceTime where it was literally like, we had messaged on Instagram a little bit, and then
so you didn't even know him before?
I didn't even know him. No, he was listening to the show. And then, had heard me talking a couple times early on with other creators, like, yeah, I would love to get into writing. Like, I've got a doc of all these random ideas that have come to me in dreams or whatever. And I just jot them down. And then when I feel creative, I have a doc that I can look at and be like, I want to write something, like, what am I feeling right now? And then, I'm feeling that'd be fun to play in the sci-fi realm. I had that one idea. And so, like, that's where I'll parse that out. And so we got together, and I had seen his username, like Punk Rock Chris, on a lot of my Instagram stuff and whatever. And so when he reached out, I was like, okay, like, you're not just trying to, tap into like the follower count or whatever that I've got, because I've had those before too, which is just dumb. Like, don't spam. We have no capital. You've never listened to my show. Like, why do you want to?
They want you to model watches and sunglasses.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll model the shit out of some sunglasses, okay? I have no shame. Like I will happily just, you know what I mean? But yeah, so like he reached out and we had a FaceTime and it was literally like, so comics, huh? Let's talk comics. What are we? And like we just started talking, and he is also an aging punk like I am. And so it was like, well, let's do, you know, like, and we just started kicking back ideas. And so like I did the actual like scripting, writing part of it. And then, but a lot of it was like, I guess it's the Marvel style of creating comics where we're not like, I'm not writing a full movie type script of like, you know, set in you know, the time is 7 p.m. The location is Wilma's, the, you know, it like, it's not any of that. It's just like, what do we, I had heard several people reference Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead as like inspiration to start making comics. And so I was like, well, if he's inspiring all these people, like, why? And so I read some of it and I looked at some of his scripts, and it was literally like, here's a sentence of what this page is supposed to accomplish. And I was like, if I can start with a sentence of what do we need to accomplish on 6 pages or whatever, like then I think we can flesh it out from there. And so that's what I did is I started like, okay, page 1, we need to do this, page 2, this, page 3, this. And I did that. And then I went back and was like, okay, so roughly how many panels? I don't know. Just start telling the story. And so I just started telling, because I don't want to limit him as the artist to, you know, whatever panel counts or page layout or whatever. Like some of them I do have very specific ideas of like, hey, I really want this splash page to have like an overlaid panel that's just like the van window. So it's shaped like the van window. The band is leaning out of it, but it's just hovering as its own thing on top of this splash page. And he was like, yeah, no, totally got it. Okay. Yeah. And like, for the most part, because we're same brained with how we see things, like he nails it on the first go, and he'll send it back. And because it's the first, you know, sequential long-term thing that he's done with somebody, and it's my first foray into writing sequentially, it's like, you know, it's very much sharing, but it's not out of a mistrust. Like I've heard some people like, oh yeah, I don't even see the layouts, I just get the finished pages. And I probably could with him. Like at this point, we are thinking the same way, but it's awesome. We're just enjoying the process. And so as he writes it, he's like, yo, check out what I did on this one panel with like, look at their feet. And I'm like, dude, those feet are so good. Like, suck it, Rob Liefeld. But you know, like, so we're doing stuff like that, but it's very much, we finished and it started as a 6-page ash can. And then we got to the 6th page and it was like, this doesn't feel like the finish. Like I feel like we need to have another 2 pages to get to the every 4 page count thing. Cause I didn't know that was a thing. And so like thinking logistically, I was like, okay, well, let's shoot for 8 pages and that'll give us 2 more pages that we can succinctly wrap this up. So it's its own contained story. And so that's what we did. And we just hopped on a FaceTime. We talked it through and it was like, cool, I'll throw this in the doc. I'll get the script out and then you'll have it to reference when you start doing layouts. But like he kind of had already started the layouts as we were talking. And so that's how it's been. And it's not, I don't know, it's not how I've heard others talk about creating comics, but I'm not even worried about that because it's what works really well for us. And I think it's, you know, like there's not a right way.
I was just going to say, I don't think there's like one way, you know, right? Like
we never do it the same way. No,
I was going to say, like, is it for you because you're writing so many different characters? Is it the same approach for each character? Or like, Jay, do you have some where you're leading with like, I have this image of this, you know, of Red Rube doing this thing? Or like, is it more that way? Or is it just kind of like totally in flux?
Well, sometimes, I mean, because I really like playing with the art style for the different characters too, although it's kind of merging. Like some of the feedback we've gotten is like, I like the pen and ink pages. And so everything's getting more and more pen and ink. But in the first few, I was just playing with styles on the different characters and what would work with them. So that was fun. But as far as the writing goes, like sometimes I'll come up with an idea for characters, like say Hastings was going to be sort of, swamp zombie type. These Frankenstein creatures were built in the swamp. Well, I tell Scott the idea, and all of a sudden it's in Germany, and like it's already fleshed out in a different way, and it's like it's good too.
Yeah. Like he'll send me sketches of like I'm gonna hold up this issue of Mine Shaft. I'm gonna plug Mine Shaft here, but he'll send me something like this where it's just like all these characters maybe.
That's awesome.
And this is not JW's, it's somebody else's, but and then it's like, oh, okay, well, what's this guy gonna do and what's this thing gonna do? And then I don't know if it works the same for you, Jay, but like for me it's like I just kind of wind them up in my head and then watch them go, sort of. And so for me it's almost like watching, like I'm making a movie in my head and then I'm just writing down what I see. And I think there's a lot of people that have said they do that. I don't think it's anything special, but I think it's definitely among creative types like us, right? But but everybody's like, that fucking guy, he's so pompous. but like I think it's true. You just wind them up and you watch them move and don't go that way, go this way. And so Chris, you bring up a good question that I've never asked JW up here. Like Jay, when you're doing the art, do you do the same thing, or are you just kind of going off of what I write and then you're like, okay, well, I got to make it look a little different from the last panel?
Yeah. So I think I'm probably better at like illustration than I am at layout. So I'm thinking about that sometimes.
What's the difference?
Like I'm more rendering things than I am thinking about like the composition of the page, especially with this rule we have about the circle on the third page. So that kind of
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. I got really like when I was at the University of Georgia, we had this film professor, and he was so into Kurosawa like films. Okay. And we would watch him in this dark room, and he would freeze it, and he would stroke his beard and explain everything. But he said Kurosawa would carry around a briefcase full of comic books, Marvel comic books, and that's how he would. That was his way of like framing, each shot or whatever. He would try and mimic what he saw in the comic books. That's awesome. And so when we came to Gimme Five, I was like, what, if we're going to have a straight 5 stories, 5 pages, 5 different characters, let's have like a formula for each page. So the first page of every story at the top is usually kind of like, hey, here's kind of like a nudge. Here's what the story is going to be about. But then, yeah, I kind of thought, oh, it's cool to have that circle in the middle, and I have no idea why. I just thought it looked cool.
Yeah, it comes from a layout from one of the old, the original comics that we're kind of paying homage to. I think it was in the Retribution story. Yeah, that had that layout.
That's cool. So
you're right.
That brings me to something else that I am insanely interested in, is how do you find these public domain characters? Like, do you go back and find like comics from the 40s and 50s and flip through them and hope that you find something? Or is there like some crazy master list on like Internet Archive of like all these characters that are in the public domain?
That too. Yeah, both. I mean, like I think before we started this, Jason and I kind of just kind of like spitballed like, hey, here's 10 that I found, here's 10 that you found. Like some kind of woman who's a tiger. It didn't really like interest me, but then he mentioned this character Retribution, and I was like, oh yeah, that fits. That's kind of like like an evil Twilight Zone kind of thing.
Yeah, Retribution for me was definitely the standout, especially from that first issue of just like I'm a sucker for the classic horror comics.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and speaking of the formula, like they do all kind of fit into the same way of doing things. And I don't know if it's overreaching, and I haven't done enough research of any of this. So take that for what it is, but it feels like the very asymmetrical and like unique and blowing out of panels and breaking the norm of page layouts didn't happen until like the indies boom of the 90s, when like Image started and Spawn was doing all, like his cape took up 3/4 of the page and there was story within the cape instead of just like the Watchmen style like 12 panel grid, which just puts me to sleep. But like that's my comic confession is I don't love the Watchmen. Like it's fine. I've read it to have that appreciation, but it's more of like I'm reading it because I need to have that appreciation for what it is. But I didn't love the Watchmen or the 7-hour movie. Like it just neither one hit for me. But like it didn't feel like that crazy page layout thing started until like really heavily, at least from my reading experience, until the 90s. And then like looking at those old horror comics, when they do have something that breaks the symmetrical layouts, it's even more eye-popping. So the fact that you found the circle in one of those older comics is like, yeah, no, that's a great thing to stand out and notice, because it probably was unique for the time that those comics were doing. Like, is that, am I completely making this up, or does this feel like something that if you think about it kind of matches? I'm looking for validation here is what's happening.
I mean, sometimes, well, I mean, like Winsor McKay, like you look at his work and his like these huge panels too, like that's some of the first comic books. So I think it's been around. It's just not, whatever phases in and out of popularity. Or just what you see, because there's so much out there, it's hard to see it all. But I agree with you. Like, Watchmen was hard to get into because of those panels. Once you did, it was okay story, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're not a fan, but
right.
But I was thinking of, it reminds me of Peter Bagg's work, because I love Peter Bagg and the writing, but the artwork for a while before you start reading it, made it hard to get into. But then, like Scott, I know, and back in the 80s, we were getting Hate Magazine and, Dan Clow's 8-Ball and all that stuff, with the early Fantagraphics.
Amy Papuda. Chris, have you ever read Amy Papuda?
I don't think I have. No.
Oh my God. Yeah.
What a name too.
Don't look that one up.
There we go.
Yeah, up there with Mike Diana, right? Or got put in jail, I think.
Jeez, what did you just tell me to get into? No, so my reading has evolved, right? I started like all X-Men all the time, and I will always love X-Men all the time, for a multitude of reasons.
Pause. So like David Earl, like we should acknowledge David. I'm sorry, Peter David, like Peter David, who wrote X Factor, like and brought back the Hulk. I mean, but X Factor for me, I never really liked X-Men, but then when X Factor came out, I was like, wow, like this the writing really pulled me in.
Yeah.
Like did you find that as a fan of X-Men, or did you like X Factor like me, or what?
So I didn't I currently have 1 through 149 of X Factor like complete.
Nice.
That's the book that I got into heavily collecting, for a multitude of reasons, mainly because I started buying a bunch of those comics from like dollar bins. But then as I started reading them, it was like, this feels much more like what I thought the X-Men could have felt like all along instead of trying to get into too many things. Like X Factor was a return, because I've read, I'm not going to say all, but I've read a vast majority of X-Men at this point, just because I'm like, it's my favorite team. Like I should read the most X-Men, but that also includes X Factor, X-Force, Excalibur, XSE, like all of the everything's. But yeah, X Factor felt very, at least the first like 65 issues, until they started like switching it, and then it became a completely different team because they brought the original 5 back into like Uncanny X-Men run. And like even the new team though, like Strong Guy, I love that character because it's just so like, he's this hulking massive dude and he's just so like innocent about everything all the time.
And that was all Peter David, man. Like, right. So like, hats off, man. He was a good dude.
Yeah. I didn't realize, I was reading about his passing this morning and looking at a lot of the titles that he read or that he wrote and worked on and the time periods that he worked on. I'm like, oh, a lot of the books that like, I've never been a huge Hulk fan, but the Hulk books that I was a fan of, he wrote. And so it was like, oh, and then, you know, obviously like X Factor, like we mentioned, I was like, oh, and then Young Justice, which was like, was one of the DC books that I actually like wanted to collect and keep up with, because I was always way more of a Marvel than a DC. But like Young Justice and like Superboy and the Ravers, like those were books, but it was the young, you know, high energy books. But Young Justice, like he was on that as well. And I was like, geez, I guess without realizing it, like I was reading a lot of his work. And the more that I read this morning on BlueSky or whatever, wherever it was, the more I was just like, oh yeah, I've read that too. Oh, that was him too. Holy crap. Like, so yeah, it definitely, it sucks when you find out about those passings. And then like hearing like right before this, hearing that like his family was dealing with like financial issues, and like he created Spider-Man 2099, but then didn't see any of the royalties or anything from the popularity of that character and the Spider-Man multiverse movie. Yeah. And so it was just like that's a bummer, man. Like this, you know, I don't know how any of that shit works. Like I'm just a punk reading comics, but someone somewhere should figure that out, because as the creator, like he should be getting some sort of compensation for the popularity that character ended up having.
Yeah, I feel like unless you're selling like coffee mugs and plushies and calendars and stuff, I don't think it's like, where do you make money on comics?
Yeah,
like I was telling Jay, like, you know, I probably lost some money with every word I wrote for comic books, you know. Like,
I think I've even lost interest in it. If we get a contract and sign a contract with it, it's like, I don't really own it that much anymore. How much effort am I going to put into it now?
Yeah. We argue about this a lot because, like for years that we tried to, we'd send stuff out and we try and get, people to just look at our comic, right?
Yeah.
And we finally got Marcosia in London to they bit and we signed a contract with them, and it's a 50-50 contract. So then 25-25, but that's okay.
I don't think we're supposed to mention that, Scott.
Who cares, man? Yeah, like but people should know. People should know how this stuff works, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not an industry secret, you know, like you have to sign stuff away, right?
Yeah.
So but the great thing is, when it came out, I was like, holy shit, here's my comic that we worked on together being sold in India, in France, in Germany, all over the world, right?
That's nuts.
Because you know, they have a big enough umbrella at Marcosia that they can do that. And I keep telling I keep telling Jay, I'm like, hey man, let's pitch Gimme Five, and he's like, no, I don't want to give away my characters. And I'm like, yeah, but I want people to like have access to it. I don't know, like,
Yeah.
like it's a double-edged sword, you know, because we have to, like the industry isn't how it was, you know, obviously,
Yeah.
and so trying to get your stuff out there, that's like half the battle, right? Like
Yeah.
Kickstarter is a great way that everybody notices something, right? But there's still people that, you know, they want a physical copy. They don't want to pay $7 for a PDF.
Right.
So
there's a solution for that. Put spinner racks into breweries.
Listen, that's such a good freaking idea, because like I'm the guy that if I have a day off, I'll just go to my local brewery. I'll bring my laptop and I'll be reading stuff on my laptop. I was sitting actually not too long ago and I was reading a book for I was reading Hexloader, which I just published a review of that you can watch now on my YouTube channel. And like the bartender was like, dude, is that a manga? Like, what are you reading? And I was just like, what? I'm sorry, what? Because, you know, he's got like the cutoff shirt and the headband. I was like, just didn't look like a dude that would read manga. And I was like, it's not manga, but it's an independent comic, which if you want independent stories, I do a whole podcast talking to creators about their stories and how unique they are. Do you listen to podcasts? He was like, I do. Are you on Spotify? I was like, I am. And so like, it made this fun interaction. And then I told him about Hexloader and, you know, I was like, I don't have any of the info on me, but like, if you find me on YouTube, like it'll have all the info on how you can find it. But if you put a spinner rack in a brewery, like if I had all the money in the world, if I won the lottery tomorrow and I won $8 million, I would create a brewery that also had a comic shop attached to it. I already have the name for it. I already have the plan for it. I just don't have the capital to make it happen. But it's like, it's prime because people just want.
That's your next Kickstarter.
Yeah. I'm here to raise $127,000 so that I can start comics on tap.
Do you have your brewmaster too?
I didn't get that far. I would love to though. That'd be, if you're a brewmaster and you want to help me out, you let me know.
I can maybe help you find one. Yeah.
But yeah, spinner racks.
There's a guy in North Carolina doing conventions and breweries that are pretty good. And I've probably sold more to just people coming in to get a beer than I have to, you know, comics folks at those conventions. Yeah. They're a lot of fun.
I feel like there's something to be said about like just thinking about selling comics differently, where it used to always be like, you got to get your books in a comic shop. And now with conventions and Kickstarter and all the crowdfunding platforms and even conventions now, like doing pop-up cons or a pop-up, you know, vendor spots in like a local market or something. Like I've seen, the further I get into the indie comics community and the more creators that I now am building in this circle of network or whatever, of just people talking like think outside the box of where you can take your comics. And like, you know, one of the guys that's been on before has a horror book. And so he'll go to horror conventions and table. And so people are selling props and masks and, you know, DVDs and all this stuff. And he's got a horror comic of his original character. And that's what he's selling. And he was like, it's a no-brainer. Like they're looking for something different at these conventions. And if you have something different that's still within the same realm, it's a win. Yep. And he was like, I keep selling out because people just like seeing something different. So like, is there, I mean, the brewery thing, like that's a great idea. And having like a convention or some sort of, you know, tag teaming with other indie creators or something to have like a, hey, we're going to take over this one spot and we're just going to be there all day. Like, do you guys do that often? Are you still in like the same area that you can do stuff like that together?
Not together. No, we're talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I live in like like mid upper Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Jason lives like, I don't know, Louisiana or something, like Tennessee.
Yeah. South Carolina in the swamp somewhere.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah, I can see the swampland behind you. And no, I don't want to buy any from you. But, but yeah, like I think I just think there's like a resurgence. And I saw to shift things to music, like I saw recently that the All American Rejects are doing like pop-up concerts in people's backyards, like, and that's their tour. They're not touring in
That's
any
cool.
venues.
Yeah.
And I listened to the guy was like, he works for a music promotion or a music, I don't know the
That's
term for him.
Undertow, I think. Is it? Undertow's booking a lot of those acts.
I think so. And it might have been, I don't know if he was with Undertow, but he was saying like, this should be a wake-up call for bands, because if big promoters, and you know, I'm a huge Blink-182 fan, I will see them every time I get a chance, but that means I'm going to these massive arenas, you know, with 35,000 other people or 60,000 other people or whatever, if they're selling out, and they're these huge, successful, like ridiculously over the top produced shows, still good, but like give me Blink in a small venue, because that's what I want to, that's where I want to be. But All American Rejects, like they kind of peaked in popularity like 15, 20 years ago with Move Along and all that, and Gives You Hell.
Sure.
And so like now there's no way they're going to sell out that arena, but they're too big to go to like the little hole in the wall spots. So if you try and book them in the bigger venues and they don't sell out, then the ticket promoters, the venue promoters are going to see that as a flop and as a failed venture, even though they're still selling all these tickets. But they said like, no, we're doing it our way. We're going to pop up in backyards so that Ticketmaster doesn't get cuts, so that, you know, the venues don't take our money. Like it's going to us and a record company. And that's how they're promoting their new album, is by doing these like underground shows. And I just think it's the most punk thing I've ever heard of, like all year with music, because they're doing something completely different. And I've seen videos from some of the shows, and it's like there's people sitting on like the roof of the house next door, just because like the backyard and all the space around them is packed with people.
Packed, man. Yeah.
And like
That's
they
cool.
played in a bowling alley. And it was just like, dude, this is the cool. And it's the All American Rejects. Like, get out of here. I saw them at my like big outdoor venue in Cincinnati, you know, a couple of years ago. And it's like, they're playing in a bowling alley. And I just think like thinking outside of the norm is, I feel like that's a resurgence, because so many big companies are just reaching in and taking things that they shouldn't be. And speaking of reaching in and taking things, like you mentioned that there was a price difference with the new one because of the tariffs.
Yeah, I was teasing you, but
Fucking
yeah.
tariffs, man.
But like it genuinely made me think, like, is there any sort of impact that you're experiencing, like shipping, and thinking about shipping for my own Kickstarter is like, that to me feels like the big, daunting, terrifying monster of everything.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even think through stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I guess you've set up your Kickstarter, because I do have a sort of a calculator. But as far as printing costs, they're going up, and you know, we've never really made any money on it. So it's like, what's the difference? It doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect us that much, because it's not a money-making thing.
Yeah.
But prices are going up, and it does come out of our pockets if we're going to print. So
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that
prices
goes
go
back
up,
to like
yeah.
zine days, man. That goes back to the zines where like Jay and I we'd be at like a Kinko's copy center in Athens running off copies, and you know, we knew we were just throwing money, you know.
Yeah.
Because you know, but you know, again, it's, you know, you have to kind of go to where your market is these days. And I think a lot of comic book buyers are guys who are our age, or, you know, somewhere in between, or maybe a little younger. You know, I don't see a lot of kids running around with comic books.
Well, just before us, it was like Mark Mothersbaugh sending postcards to, what's the guy that does Pee Wee's Playhouse? anyway, those guys were sending postcards back and forth, like zines, but different. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I used to be totally against digital comics, and I was like, no, I need to feel it and I need to smell, like I need the smell of the comic. There's a very distinct smell, and some of the older comics that I've picked up, like I just read one a couple weeks ago from like 1968, and I like slowly, you know, I washed my hands before, I'm like super crazy, but I like slowly opened it, and the first thing I did was just like it.
Yeah, man.
You know, I had to do it from when I was home alone because my wife would have been like, what is wrong with my husband? But like there's something to be said about holding a comic. But then I got into digital, and it's like it's so much more convenient. And as I've shifted almost entirely for, like, I don't buy anything from the big two anymore. I just wait till it comes out as a trade and I check it out from my library. But like, because libraries are the best and you should leave them alone. But like I go to my local comic shop and I'm like, hey, like what indies or whatever have come in, and I'll pick up a couple things and I always get my supplies there. But I'm primarily just going straight to Kickstarter these days. But there's so many good comics out there that I'm like, I can't afford print and shipping and all of the extra stuff forever. Like I gotta cherry pick.
There's a lot of good stuff. There is, and I'm getting it the same way, Kickstarter or just in person at conventions and talking to the artists and finding a lot of good, like Jeremy Bastian that does the Pirate Girl. Maybe 10 years ago, I met him at Baltimore, and he's still doing Pirate Girl. But it's a beautiful book. I don't know. Have you seen that one?
I haven't.
The first Pirate Girl. Yeah, and there's a guy in North Carolina, Matt Lisnewski, that's doing Faceless now. And met him a few years ago at a convention. Yeah. But now he's like winning Eisner Awards, and so that's like for me, I just like meeting people and talking to them, and you know, I have a lot of comic books that didn't hit, but the few that do, it's interesting. And you know, you met him back when.
Yeah, and that again is like the magic of encapsulating all that creative energy in a bottle at a con, because every time I leave a con, I'm like, man, I'm gonna make so many comics right now, it's insane. And then I get home and I'm like, oh, I gotta vacuum. Never mind.
Reality hits.
Yeah, and like the disparity between making comics because we love making comics and making comics to make a living, like I think about it probably more than is healthy, because it's like I don't want to keep clocking in at the bank that I work at. Like I just want to make comics all day, and like and every creator is like, we don't make. Somebody hunting behind you, Jay? What is going on?
I think it's something. It's either that or a cannon. It's in North Carolina. So
casually saying it's either that or a cannon is just
that's pure America, man.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, like we should, as the creators, we shouldn't have to like lose money every time we try and make a comic and get it out there. Like, and speaking of which, like your Kickstarter only has like a $200 goal. Like, how?
Yeah.
What?
So we did one. Scott, you have to chime in when you're ready. But so I was gonna surprise Scott with a Kickstarter on the show because he's not a huge fan. But we did one, and we begged everybody, give us money, and it was a $2,000 campaign, and it's not fun to just beg so much. So this time I was like, let's do 200, see what happens, and just don't tell anybody about it. It's not going so well yet, but hopefully
that's because you don't have a busty woman as the main picture, because then we'd hit like 800%. Yeah, my
goal is say 20 backers for $10 each, so that more people get it than say one person buying 200, something like that.
Yeah,
look, the goal's 200, but I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
we don't want one person spending $200 on it. We want more people.
Yeah, I love that intentionality, because that's how Chris and I approached it when we were talking about all this. Was like, what are we going to do? And we're like, we're just crusty punks. Like, we're used to spending our last dollar for the album at the show just to support them. So like, how do we, carry that over into the Kickstarter? And it's like, well, we keep everything as cheap as possible. So that's what we've like, I think we have a $600 goal, but that's like production, shipping, like that's, I think that's like all in, I think. I have to revisit it for the number of stuff because I've just been like, shipping, I don't know. And I just leave it. And then every time I do that, and I just need to sit down and actually work through it. But yeah, it was just like, we're keeping it super lean. We're not going to do like, it's not about all the extras or add-ons. It's about the book. So like, here's the book, and he's done a cover. I'm not an artist by any means, but I've been being intentional about trying to like learn. And so I'm doing like an homage cover thing as like a variant, but we both did everything on the book, and we both plan to do everything on every book every time. And we just don't have like stickers because, stickers and punk, like that fits really well. And like, that's all we're doing. You know what I mean? I think a print too of his cover is, and that's it. So
it is tough to get out there because you have to have, if the book is what it's going to sell it, then how do people see the book and they want to commit to it, right? So we do 3 pages, we do 5 pages a month. We post 3 pages everywhere that we can think of every month. So the ending is missing from every story, and everything else is like kind of out there in public. And it's still hard to. There's just so much out there. Everything from the dawn of time to now is available. So
it's terrifying when you put it in. You're gonna give me an existential crisis. Like, there's so many things,
and a lot of it's good.
Any time. But it is true. Like, I feel like I need to add. I always joke about it, and eventually I'm going to do it. But I want to add a line on my resume, like really good at compiling lists of things to experience, and like not experiencing the things. But I saw somebody on Threads the other day, like I spent 2 hours looking for something to watch, and by the time I found something to watch, I had spent enough time that I now have to go to bed because I have to work tomorrow. It was like, I've been there. Yeah.
I try not to go to bed. It's the worst because then you have to go to work in the morning and
right. Maybe that's why I'm an insomniac. I'm just putting it off.
So, but it does become kind of a whirlwind when you're out there trying to find something. But I guess for all that I dislike about Kickstarter, I think like it is kind of the most viable place right now to see what's out there, what's new, and just kind of get a feel for what are people doing,
and unfortunately a lot of it's that not safe for work stuff.
Who's buying all that? That's like, it's weird.
But they've got like $10,000 now. So
I know. I know. They don't have to go to their job.
I've told Jay, I'm like, who's buying this? Just like I don't know.
Just make one of those and kickstart it and go gangbusters, and then that'll fund the next 3 years worth of Gimme Five.
That must be it.
Yeah. Like I just do it under a different pen name so that, it's, listen, I'm giving you guys a business model over here. That's a great idea.
Let AI do that
one. So back to, with the like public domain characters and there's a lot out there. Like, how do you balance in each issue? And I know we kind of touched on it already, but like, are you thinking through like we want to at least have one public domain and then a couple like 2 public domain and 3 new characters per issue? Like, is that an intentional balance that you're trying to strike, or is it purely the like I'm feeling like I've got another Ghost Girl story in me, so that's what I'm going to write right now, and that's where it's going to go?
Sometimes I'll push for something, but I think for the most part, Jason kind of has the the master plan in his head, right? Kind of like the map in his head, and I'm just the guy saying, oh yeah, let's stop here, and cool, I'll buy some snacks and beer.
Yes, as far as being intentional about the public domain characters, yeah, we have to have at least 1 or 2 every issue. But we've twisted them so much that, you know, they're ours now. like
Yeah.
Especially like,
Yeah.
I mean, you asked about Red Rube earlier. He's like Shazam, except for instead of the wise elders, he's got his family is you know, circus people, the strong man and the acrobat, the human cannonball.
The freak.
Just weirdos, yeah. so it makes him kind of strange, because in the beginning, the original Red Rube was a Shazam ripoff, basically. So I was like, I can't do that again. It's more that's my emphasis right there.
They heard you talking about tariffs, and now they're like trying to triangulate your position.
Like, that's right. Oh god, that's nerve-wracking, Scott. What was I saying? The characters. So Hastings and Steve Keith are always
the balance and
the balance. You were talking about how, you know, Red Rube. It's kind of like a ripoff of Shazam.
That's right. Yeah, here you go. Oh, you got the cover. Did you do have you done the cover yet?
You want to let's take a look. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have a exclusive first look access at the issue 5 cover for Gimme Five Comics. And here it is.
There you go. So that's Red Rube in the front.
There it is.
Hell yeah.
It's so good.
And that's Scott's favorite character, Steve Keith, there in the middle. Scott, you want to talk about Steve?
Yeah,
for
man.
those that don't know, what does Steve Keith do?
Steve Keith is like, what if you were a superhero? Like when I was a kid, right? Like, remember those What If comics, right? So like, I loved those when I was a kid. And so it's like, what if you were a superhero, but you had really shitty superpowers? Like you could fly, but super slow, and you could, you know, like you didn't have super strength, and you were just kind of a general loser. You know, like the powers didn't do anything special for you, right? And like he can go back in time, but in his universe, and it's set somewhere in England. I don't know, but like he went back in time and he tried to game the system, kind of like Back to the Future with Biff, where he went back in time to like play the lottery so he'd win the lottery.
Yeah.
And he got busted, so he has to wear a little ankle bracelet, and he has a parole officer, and he has to work shitty jobs, like, you know, like manager of some fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
And you know, like, and it's shitty because he hates it. Like there's probably people that love being a general manager of Burger King, but you know, they don't have superpowers and they're not stuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Steve Keith, you know, and he just doesn't have a very good compass. Oh, he also has the ability to make people projectile vomit, and so he's kind of like this, like he'll put himself out there. And people like if Chris, if you wanted to get back at your neighbor for like, I don't know, letting his dog shit on your lawn or something, and he had a big dinner party, you could hire Steve Keith to like to get nearby and make everybody projectile vomit or something, and just ruin the night.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely hire for that.
But you know, and then you know, I got and then like when he flies, like, kids throw bottles at him, and he snuck into a Bruce Springsteen concert and tried to meet Bruce, and Bruce blew him off. So then Steve steals his guitar, and then we find out, you know, at the end, you know, it's like, you know, he's stolen a bunch of other stuff from other people, famous people or whatever. So he's just kind of a pissy, messy guy that has shitty superpowers.
I love it.
He's so much fun to write. He's so much fun to write.
I mean, when you can play with a questionable moral compass, like you can put all of the terrible life experiences that you might have into it and have Sam Keith just make them throw up on each other. Like the crammed bus scene where everybody keeps telling him like, back up, turn around, really, dude? Like, why are you poking me? And then he's just like, that's it. I've had enough. And then everybody's just vomiting on everybody.
And that happened to me. I went in Chicago one time. That happened to me. So like I used I didn't make everybody puke, but I wish I could have.
You almost can do it, Scott. That would be your superpower.
Yeah, that, and if I could go back in time, I would try and game the system. So so there is a lot of me and Steve.
That's awesome.
And I would, and like I worked so much because I was an English major, so I worked all those shitty. I was the assistant manager of a laundromat.
Yeah, you were.
How great is that? And I fucking hated every time I had to go in. So I know what it's like to just wish you were somewhere else and could be doing something else. But
yeah,
we won't be. I don't know. Yeah. I'll stop.
So then we've got Sheeran way back here.
Yeah, I love Sharon's story, but I think maybe Scott could talk about it more. But she's basically doesn't grow old and has this exploding power that she can't control quite yet.
Yeah, like you kind of think like, okay, like what the hell is that vampire movie with like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt?
That's the one that Sting wrote about.
Is that Interview with the Vampire?
Yes. All right. Yeah, that's Jay's favorite movie too. By the way, I'm surprised you didn't know the title. But in there's a little girl, right? And she, like, I was watching part of it like last year or something, and I was like, wow, what if you were like a 7-year-old vampire? Like, how shitty is that?
Yeah.
Right. You're just like, nobody takes you seriously, and how do you manage? So I kind of toyed around with that idea. What if there was a little girl who couldn't age, and she had like this weird superpower that she didn't know how to control because she's too young, and kind of just goes supernova and creates. So what we did with her is I tried to think of like all these instances of history where, like the Triangle Shirt Factory fire from like, how did that start? Well, she was there. And how did the Chicago fire start? She was there. And how, so she kind of moves through history, but ages very slowly, and tries to navigate kind of being this immortal kid who, so I with that, I had to research and look up, okay, how would a Chinese immigrant have like saved money? How could they start a bank account and things like that? So I dive deep on some of these. So I try to bring like some kind of a factual, like how would a 14-year-old girl, be able to save money back in the 1880s?
Yeah.
Right. Especially if she's Chinese, women had no rights. So yeah, I just kind of go down rabbit holes with that one.
Yeah. See, that's my problem is I'll spend so much time researching something like that by the end of it, I'm like, that's incredibly fascinating. What else was going on? And then I just get stuck in that. And then I end up inevitably like, how did this even start? What am I trying? Did I learn what I needed to learn?
Yeah. And so that's what's kind of cool about having all these different characters. You can do that and then say, well, I can put that over here and take this piece and stick it up here in this corner. And it's kind of fun that way.
That's cool. So we've got Red Rube here, in the red. And then we've got Mud, who is has to be one of the most fun characters to write, I would think, of all of them. And I love that you've put Mud with Hastings to get this like almost freak show comic story team of sorts. So talk to me about Mud.
Yeah, Jay, I'll let you talk this time.
Scott started Mud as a screenplay in college.
Yeah.
And
Okay. So I wasn't going to go there, Jay, but thank you.
to start, that's the beginning.
Yeah. But yeah, so I started Mud as kind of like this screenplay because we had a friend from Georgia who went to LA, and she became a script reader and a production assistant.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, poke, like I got something for you. And she sent something back saying, oh, it's too common or something like that. And I was like, fuck you.
You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know how good it is. So Mud just kind of sat on the shelf for a long time. And then when Jay was like, hey, we got to come up with characters, I was like, Mud, because
I wanted to do a swamp monster. I've always wanted to do swamp monsters. I just, I grew up in South Carolina, and I was in the swamp a lot.
Yeah.
And it's some of the earliest memories of comics and things like that with, so Man-Thing or whatever. But yeah, so.
Yeah, you've always been in a Man-Thing.
Yeah. The Laughing Dead.
So how do you feel about Man-Thing in Werewolf by what was it? Werewolf by Midnight? Werewolf at Midnight? The whatever the Disney Plus limited black and white series was that I
have only seen photos. I think he looks cool,
okay.
But I haven't seen the show itself.
Okay. Then I won't say a word more. You should watch it though, because he's in it. So,
Yeah. I do. I'm not, I'm trying not to buy everything and watch everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll come around at some point.
Yeah, it's I always, I don't know how I managed it, but I never got into any of like the monster side of Marvel or DC. And then now that I'm like all horror all the time, I'm like, God, there's some like really good horror that came out on Marvel and DC, and they sprinkled it into like regular, more mainstream titles with just like horrific elements in them. And like, how did I miss all of this as a kid? And then I remember like, oh yeah, well, my mom wanted me to not read anything from Image because they all had like the anatomically incorrect women and they were all too scantily clad on the covers. So naturally when my dad took me to the comic shop, he was like, oh, you like this Savage Dragon? Look at her. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take that one, Dad. Thank you. But yeah, I would imagine they probably tried to shield me, but then the first time I watched horror was with my dad, and it was a Psycho and the Birds double feature at my Nana's house, and they played them back to back, and like that was my like, these are terrifying and I love them moment. And it just like starting there was a really high bar. But
yeah, like one of the first movies.
When I was a kid, I always wanted to see like comics, like just like I wanted Sandman to have his own series.
Yeah.
And just see all the bad shit he would do.
Yeah.
And so I guess I never really got into the horror like stuff, but I always wished that I like villain comics, man. I really wanted those when I was a kid.
Yeah. Jay, you were gonna say horror too?
Oh yeah, just and swamp related. The first movie I think I remember seeing, and only just barely, is The Legend of the Boggy Creek Monster. My parents took me to that when I was a little kid, which is kind of a bad B movie, I think, but I remember
you love bad B movies, man.
Hey, have you seen Frogs?
Yes.
Speaking of bad B movies.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I would have been shocked if you said no. Because he's always sending me these things like, oh, you should watch this movie, and I'll last like 3 minutes, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
I can't. No.
Yeah. I wanted key lime pie, and I got like, I don't know, some kind of weird like lemon or something. I don't know.
Some sort of not good pie that someone somewhere likes. Probably in South Carolina or North Carolina.
Yeah.
With the cannons going off.
With the cannons.
I think that's probably a first for your podcast, having cannons being shot at like the guest.
It is. Yeah. I had a guy on that was streaming from a field in Hawaii with like the mountain behind him. And I was like, how is this your life? And he was like, I don't have any reception at my house. So I had to, do a little bit of a hike and come out here. So it was high enough to get reception. I was like, oh, real tough life, dude. But I haven't had any cannons. So this is forever now the canon episode.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make inside jokes all the time about the canon episode. And no one but the three of us are going to get it. And I'm totally okay with that. But so speaking of canons and first times and nothing, there's no transition. I'm just going to hard transition. I got two things left for you before I let you go, because I'm out of my official notes there. See, I take notes and stuff. But I'm out of official notes, but I have two more things for you. The first is real simple. We're just going to take a screenshot. I'm going to use that as the thumbnail for YouTube. And it's a fun way for us to pose and makes my life way easier. So let me get my shortcut here, and then I'll count us down and we'll pose. So you're Gimme Five. So I'll do the 5. Yeah, there it is. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. And then the second thing, and I pre-warned you about this, this is that time. So I love doing Long Box Funk because I get to talk to indie creators that have all different walks of life, all different experiences, but we all have that shared similarity of loving comics, specifically indie comics. Part of why I love doing this show is because I get to hear authentic and unique voices from those creators. And so I always end every episode by shutting my mouth and letting the creators talk. So if there's anything that you want people to hear directly from you, it could be like, hey, click the link in the description and go back. Gimme Five Comics number 5 on Kickstarter right now, because you can totally do that. Or it could be why firing cannons in the background is the best way to spend Memorial Day weekend. The content doesn't matter to me so much as I just want you to be able to have a space to share your unique voices with the world. I'll let you fire cannons at each other to see who's the last man standing to go first.
Yeah, Jay always likes the last word, so I'll go first. So I was telling Jay the other day that I read this book on interviews a couple years ago. And in it, Keith Richards talks about how he has this theory that everybody who's creative has antennas that shoot up. And sometimes all these ideas are floating in the ether, right? And your antenna and my antenna pick up that same idea at the same time and we pull it down. And but it's who does something with it. That counts. Like we all get ideas all the time and we forget them or we put them in a document and then they get buried. So I would say, for anybody who wants to write or who wants to do comics, if you get an idea, just start doing it. You don't have to be the best writer. You don't have to be the best artist. Just get it down and find some way to try and get it out. And that's it doesn't have to be Kickstarter. There's all these different subs on Reddit where people are looking for they can get feedback and they can get advice and things like that. And just get out there and do it, because your idea might spark somebody else's idea, and that might be how the next big thing comes about.
To steal a Robin Williams joke, at the end of the world, it's going to be Keith Richards and a cockroach. And Keith is going to look at the cockroach and say, I smoked your uncle. Did you know that? Fucking crazy.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do people still know who Keith Richards is these days? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my I can kind of ramble a little bit, and just thank you, Chris, for having us on, because the service you're doing for a whole indie community is fantastic. I've been listening
Hell
to
yeah.
your show to catch up, and you make everybody sound great. So good luck to us, and I'm looking forward to your Kickstarter too. But so that's one piece I wanted to say. So next, this is probably the last issue of Gimme Five, but we're going to switch to Double Nickels, which will kind of continue the stories that we have, but then we're going to lose that format where it's just 5 pages. We're probably going to release comics less frequently, so it might be a longer book, something like that. Definitely going to be more pages than 5. And we are hoping to work with more people on that book than we have in Gimme Five. So more writers, more artists. We'd love to do some trades, like artwork trades, especially pin-ups, covers, even stories, whatever. We want to like meet other folks and get some more stuff out there.
Yeah, and
That's
we're always asking for people, like, send us your story ideas. Send us, if you want to try art, like, nobody's going to really get paid for it. So, but sometimes, like, you just got to get it out there, and it's just, like, Chris, you're seeing it. It's cool to see something that you wrote all of a sudden take a form.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple of people answer the call, and we're always looking for more.
Oh, can I say one more thing then? That reminds me.
Yeah.
See, he needs the last word. That's why.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you after
yeah.
this. I just wanted to, so Joe Lansdale's new movie is out. It's called The Thicket. It's got Peter Dinklage in it. It's pretty good if you want to see it. It's got Juliette Lewis. There's Keith Lansdale's movie that was, I think, The Pale Door.
Yeah.
Zombie. Well, you have to watch that one. It's a Western, a zombie Western. I think I'll let it. Awesome. You watch that on your own. And Zila Draws is doing our social media. She's awesome. And who else? Oh, JP Torres is doing some awesome stuff. If you go to our website, you can link over to his stuff too.
He's great.
Yeah. He's
Nice.
Great artist.
And what would that website be?
It is skilletfire.com. Thank you. So skilletfire.com has links to all these folks and more. So yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to hear what you're saying, Jay, over all those birds. You have like
I feel like you're in the Hunger Games with all the
Mockingjays.
I'm
sorry. Chris, the Hurricane Helene hit my house, so I don't really have a good space inside, so that's why I'm out here.
No, it's totally fine. Just giving you a rip. Yeah, no, I love what you guys are doing with breathing life into these older characters while creating new ones, while also giving them their unique flavors. I really enjoy, as I was reading the other 3 comics of Gimme Five leading up to today, it was just like, man, these are just fun freaking stories. So hats off to both of you for what you're creating with Gimme Five. And I just hope that people get on board. Back to Kickstarter. You have until June 6th, 12 more days from today, to back the Kickstarter. Again, the link is in the description below, or if you're listening, it's in the show podcast description. I don't know what they call them on whatever platform you're on, but the link is there. So you just tap to expand, tap the link, go to Kickstarter, back the book. You can get fully caught up, which you totally should, because these characters are very fun to read. Highly enjoy them. This has been a blast talking to both of you. I really enjoyed our conversation. Hang tight after this. I got some logistical stuff for both of you. And then everybody else, though, thanks for tuning in. If you like this, do the thing that content creators tell you to do, because I'm not one of those, and you know what those things are. But just sound off. Like, let's have a conversation, because building the indie comics community is one of the best things that I have found to be a part of. So I love doing this show. I love talking to creators, and I love reading indie comics, and you should too. And what's a good podcast without a good tagline? This one's mine. Go do what's good for you, punks, and read some indie comics, because we are out of here. Then I always dance at the